I think Alvin Kamara is talking real greasy, and that's so disrespectful to the reigning defending Super Bowl champs. I mean, I understand that they came one play from going to the NFC Championship game, but that championship game wasn't going to be indoors. That was going to be outside in the Link in January, and good luck with that, especially when you look at how that Eagles team was built. So I understand Alvin Kamara, year two, wanting to have some optimism coming off of being Offensive Rookie of the Year. All of that's great. But when you start looking at what the Philadelphia Eagles did last year, the reason they were able to win that championship is because they had better big people than everybody else. Their offensive line, their defensive line played at a higher level. And guess what? Those groups got stronger this offseason. Jason Peters is coming back from an injury. You look at the defensive front. They got Michael Bennett in a trade. They brought in Haloti Ngata. Those two groups got better. So, I mean, when you look at those two teams, the Saints and the Eagles competing for a championship, you're saying to yourself, okay, the Eagles actually got better in that situation. I don't know if the Saints are going to be on par with that, but guess what? We'll find out in Week 11.
Well, I'm not going to speak to what happened post-Super Bowl because that's talking about for this upcoming year. As far as this comment, I agree with him. I think if the Saints would have beaten the Vikings, they would have gone to the Super Bowl. I do think if the Saints had beaten the Vikings, especially the way they came back against Minnesota, a brilliant second half until the Minnesota Miracle, because that offense was dead in the water the first half against the Vikings and then was great in the third and fourth quarters, the fourth quarter in particular. And I think we forget how Nick Foles had looked prior to the NFC Championship game. He was not good in their first playoff game. He was not good in the game against the Falcons that took them to the NFC Championship game. If you remember the end of the first half there, he tried to throw an interception and got his own guy tipped it away, and they ended up scoring on that drive. We would have looked at that as Breeze, Foles, the Saints rolling, and I agree with him. I think the Saints were at that moment, the moment Stephon Diggs catches that football, everything up until that, the Saints to me were the best team. Now, Philly has gotten better, and Nick Foles got confidence and played great, and I take nothing away from what they did. I think right now they are the favorites going into this upcoming season for a lot of the things you say. But I think Kamara's right. I think that Saints team would have beaten Philadelphia last year.
Kamara's not right.
Thank you, CC. Thank you.
And Nick is wrong again. Kamara, this is what happens in the league. Kamara sat in that chair. I have been watching some film of him. He didn't even know how to run an option route. I was talking to him, hey, man, you need to do this. You need to stop bowing out because they can read it. They're going to undercut you. You need to straighten the guy up, put pressure on him. He was like, oh, yeah, thanks, man. You saw him doing that up and down the field, Sean Payton. Now he's played one season. Oh, man, we whooped everybody. Man, we whooped everybody. Nick and I were at the Link, at the NFC Championship. No one was beating the Eagles on that day in that crowd.
See, that crowd lit up on a Case Keenum pick. That crowd, right?
No. That crowd came to that game lit, all right?
They did.
All right, okay, true. But it was
No. You stop. I'm not going to let people play fantasy football with real football, all right? The Eagles, they don't match up bad against anyone. All right? The Saints do match up bad. The Vikings do match up bad against different teams. The Saints defense wasn't as good as what Nick Foles did to that Vikings defense. Let's not forget what happened. Let's not forget the magnitude of that game. So, no, that you can't draw that conclusion. You had one play to make. You didn't make it in Minnesota. So all this hoping and praying and everything, like you didn't win that game. And to think that you're going to make it to the Super Bowl over the Super Bowl champs, like that's not the way the NFL works. I also saw a kid right here who didn't understand the NFL. And now all of a sudden now he's an expert on who's going to win, matchups and everything. I don't think so. This Philly team and that defensive front, it matches up better against the Saints than the Vikings in their front line does.
I'm just simple. And all this shoulda, woulda, coulda, I don't even understand it. To me, the whole statement is disqualified once you said, if we had, but you didn't. But you didn't.
Correct.
So what are you talking about?
Talk to Marcus Williams.
Correct. It's a game of inches. Like, nah,
But he is talking about the reason he's saying if we had it.
What he should be saying, Nick, is, man, I wish we would have had that opportunity.
That's what he should be saying.
That would have been really nice to go there, to be able to face that team in that crowd. Yeah, like, man, that would have been a good game.
We
because
had
that's what we thought.
Yeah.
We thought that would be a good game, too.
in the Drew Brees era and the Sean Payton era of the New Orleans Saints, that has been a different team away from the Superdome. It's not the same team when they have to play outdoors.
The Minnesota game was indoors.
That was indoors.
Of course.
Okay.
And Drew Brees was still underthrowing passes. One of them ended up resulting in a turnover. So when you start talking about an aging quarterback having to go outdoors in January, it's not going to be as effective. And that team goes as the offense goes.
I get all of that. The point that I'm making is, and the reason Kamara, I think, can say this, is because it's not like he's saying if we had won a game that they got blown out in, or if we had won a game that they were decisively beaten. He's saying if we had won a game that for us to lose the game, the play that beat us is called a miracle. So it's as close as you can come to winning a football game with not winning a football game.
But the game was close, though, Nick. The Saints weren't blowing out anyone all year. So now all of a sudden, see, that's what I'm going. I'm going to blow out the Super Bowl champs. Like, stop.
That's a statement too far. That's fine. But if you're asking, do I think they would have blown out the Eagles? I shouldn't say I agree with that part of it. Yeah. But I think they would have beaten them. And I also think we have to remember that prior even to the Super Bowl, like we were talking about the Eagles being disrespected because they were home underdogs in the playoffs, because they were Nick Foles was not writing books, best-selling author, a guy everyone wants to be their starting quarterback until, honestly, everything that happened after that Case Keenum interception.
Halfway through the first quarter in that game.
Yes.
But, Nick, you need to take people in that environment. Cris Canty, you have been there. And to think you are going to NFC Championship in Philadelphia, who's never won a Super Bowl, and you getting ready to beat them, I mean, you still got Similac on your breath, boy. Okay. You just now getting to the league. That atmosphere was real special. Right. All right? And they took that momentum from winning that divisional game and that NFC Championship game. That game was one-sided. The Vikings, I have the video. I have the video of the Vikings taking the field, and they did not look like a team that was getting ready to jump on top of the Philadelphia Eagles in that crowd and be able to beat them.
No, they looked like a team that had all the emotion sapped of them from the Minnesota Miracle.
So what do you think New Orleans is going to do? New Orleans had to jump on a flight, fly 3 hours, have a short week, and still come back on that Sunday night to be able to beat Philadelphia.
This is what I think. I think Drew Brees is not intimidated by the Link crowd. That's what I think. I think Drew Brees does not play the game Case Keenum does, and I think that game got away from them quickly at, like you said, at the midway point of the first quarter, things started going sideways. That's I mean,
their secondary, the Vikings secondary, man. That's where they struggled. They give it too many big plays early.
I don't know why he might not be intimidated, but you don't have to be scared to get hit in the mouth. And that's exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles defensive front has done to every opposing quarterback all season long.
All right, so this comment aside, I want to ask all of y'all, what are reasonable expectations for this year's New Orleans Saints? I'll start with you.
Win their division.
Oh, okay.
Well,
win their division. It's a stacked division.
Yeah.
That's going to be tough. I think it's the best division in football with 3 MVP quarterbacks. But I think the Saints told us with what they did in the draft, moving up from 27 to 14 to get Marcus Davenport, they're trying to compete for a championship. Yeah. It ain't about next year. It's about this year.
I mean, if it's reasonable expectations for any team to go to a Super Bowl, than it is for the Saints. Like I think the Eagles, because they have Wentz coming back, that wasn't the case if they would have played. The additions you made. The Eagles are the favorites in the NFC. But after the Eagles, I put the Saints eye to eye with the Vikings, and I can't discount the Packers because Rodgers is there, and maybe the Rams. Like, they are right there in that group right beneath Philadelphia as the best teams in the conference.
I always mention on this show that I grew up in a housing project. Marcus Davenport, he is a project, okay? Now, if he makes a significant impact for the Saints as that #1 pick, because he is a project.
Small school guy.
Read the clippings about him and what he's going through at training camp before we get all these projections.
It ain't good.
Okay.
It ain't good.
I mean, it's just called read.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.